good to meet you in person. We've actually done an email interview recently for the recent project you had, but we're really excited to have you on for this because you have a new project, new band, I should say, called A to
Thank you.
Z. A to Z. You know, sometimes people don't like that term project, right? Because it makes it sound like it's not an actual thing. Is that right?
Well, what's happened, as you guys know, and like over the last 10 or 15 years, it's basically, excuse the expression, been Project Hell. And basically,
Right.
what that is, you can blame the musicians to a point, but you also have to blame the labels because the labels are doing these. And I've been involved with my share. You know, they're looking, okay, let's shove these 6 or 5 guys together. We're going to throw a couple bucks at each of them and let's see something flies. Well, what I always kind of sound, it kind of struck me after all that, not a lot of them fly. Okay. You know, myself, this is definitely a band. I
Yep.
started it as a band. I have, as you know, or you don't know, but I have 16-year-old twins. So, 16 years ago, it was a little rough to be on the road. I thought it was, kind of uncool not to be around. So now that they're old enough, it's time to get back at it and do what I really want to do band wise instead of just all the recordings and projects and all that kind of cute stuff. But this is definitely a band. Started as a band, it'll finish as a band. Doing the cycle. We're doing the record, we're doing the interviews, we're doing the videos, we're going to be doing the tours. We're actually writing material right now for album number 2.
Awesome.
So it's going. It's going.
Yeah,
So
really cool.
yeah,
Um,
that the project thing, I think what happens too, is the fans get a little bummed out because it's just like, and you can tell a lot of times with a project, it's kind of a throw and go. The difference between this and that is I kind of put my money where my mouth was, and got guys like Hugh Syme to do all the artwork. Spent the extra money on the videos because if I'm expecting the fans to really buy into this, I can't charge a steak price and give them a hamburger. You
yeah.
know, um, Especially these kind of fans. This is definitely not, hey, go to my website and look at the cute artwork. No one wants that. They want to hold the vinyl. They want to look at the stuff. So came at it that way from more of an old school approach.
Yeah, I think that's awesome. The album comes out on August 12th. And as we are talking today, you guys dropped the second single and my favorite song on the record, which I wanted to talk to you about, Trial by Fire, but we'll get into that. But talk about who you have in the band. I'll let you mention everybody. For those that haven't paid attention, there's a great reunion here with you and Ray Alder on this band, which is fantastic for everybody. But talk about the band, how you guys came together. How'd you get these 5 guys?
It was my idea from the start. It's kind of like my band Slavior. I think it was back in 2007. I want to base a lot of the stuff around the drum patterns because I sit around all day, and besides recording for other people, I record for myself and try to be creative. And it's a lot easier to have someone write music to a kind of wacky drum part than me trying to shove that part into somebody's song. So that was my philosophy. Okay, I have 108 different ideas. Let's start putting songs together. The first guy I actually called was Matt Guillory, the keyboard player, and he said he was too busy, which basically that today that's translated as how much money is involved? None. Okay, I'm busy. I get it. I get it. I totally get it. I'm the same way. Someone calls me up and says, unless it's something overly exciting. So I guess I wasn't overly exciting, but he turned me on to Vivian Leloup, who I honestly never heard of. I'm not a guy who sits around and listens to prog and gets up on all the latest and greatest. And they're younger than I am. So it wasn't like in my wheelhouse of like who I knew. Called him up on the phone and we started chatting. And, he told me all about how when he was in high school, he was listening to Chroma Key and Warlord and Fates Warning and blah, blah. And I'm thinking, oh man, Mark, you're old. Um, but I sent him out an idea and it came back. It was actually Rise Again. It's that drum pattern in Rise Again, the electronic thing. And there's nothing on this record from a drum point of view that's programmed or sequenced. All that stuff is played live. 2 reasons. I hate program stuff. And I figured if you're going to play it live, you need to be able to play it live. And I love that incorporation. I was doing it very early in Fates Warning, where I'd incorporate the electronics with the kit, not having a separate electronic kit, but having together. I'm playing the electronics. So it's just more sounds. So he sends me back ideas for Rise Again. And I just, kind of fell off my chair. I went, oh my God, this is really happening. The cool thing about Viv as a keyboard player, is he's a composer as well, but he has a whole bunch of different like the sounds, but guitar sounds too. So when we're putting music together, it's not like we're lacking a guitar. He's coming up with like the different heavy guitar parts and stuff. And we basically had songs completely written, just him and I.
Oh,
Um, Most of the songs started that way. You can kind of tell, you hear Trial by Fire and you hear that, the groove in the verse, that was like, hey guys, write something to this. I couldn't really shove that into someone else's song. The Silence Broken, same thing. It's got the drum pattern. Stranded started with that kind of electronic drum thing. And then it just grew from there. Philip obviously was the choice for a bass player. Probably one of the few guys in the world that I'd leave my kids, my checkbook, and the keys to my house to. Turned out to be a great friend over the years and just the automatic guy to go to. And then, Jupe had worked with Viv for years, so that was kind of a no-brainer. Viv brought him in, started playing different guitar parts. As much as he was just adding to what we were doing, he also came in with a couple cool riffs that we built songs around that worked out very well. And then it came down to the vocalist, the all-important vocalist. And I knew I needed Steve Walsh. I needed Steve Perry. I needed, just a great big-time commercial rock singer. Because the last thing I wanted to hear was, yeah, this is all cool, but I can't stand your singer, So Ray wasn't the first choice just because I wasn't sure what was going on with him. I wasn't sure what is Fate's Warning connection and problem. It's none of my business. It's just, I didn't know what he was doing. So I, talked to about 30 different guys, some big name guys. I'm close friends with Phil Ahart from Kansas, who's been helping me along the way because he's obviously managed Kansas for about 40 years and kind of mentoring me a little bit with different things. And, I said, hey, Phil, I know you guys replaced Steve Walsh, but who came in second? Who came in third? Just looking for singers. He turned me on to a couple guys and, again, they were all busy. No, everybody's kind of looking for that quick thing. The other thing that's very interesting that I knew that even hit me harder in the face, hey, there might be a lot of great singers, but there ain't a lot of great writers. And when you start talking to some of these singers and you start talking about, hey man, we want you to write the melodies and the lyrics because that's kind of your gig. A lot of them freak out. A lot of them just don't have that. That's a double-edged thing. It's kind of like a basketball player who doesn't play defense. He just plays offense.
right.
But that's what was brilliant about Ray. It got to that point where like, okay, man, I got nothing happening. The songs are coming together. Just call them. We never had bad blood ever, ever, ever. And actually, when he lived in LA, we used to hang out all the time at my studio, and we were both into cars and all that kind of stupid stuff back then. And so I just called him and started chit-chatting. I didn't want to get deep into his personal stuff or what he had going. I just said, hey, this is what I got going. Are you interested in giving it a shot? And he said, yeah. And the first thing he sent back in was Rise Again. And it completely blew us away. And I knew right then we were onto something. I remember from the old days, Ray telling me how he was into this kind of music because it's kind of what he was raised on, and his favorite singer is Steve Perry. So, it worked out. It worked out well. It gave him a different avenue to go, no odd time signatures,
Right.
Everything wasn't, overly dark. And we had songs, we purposely put them together with vocals in mind, almost like pop arrangements. We're not talking about 12-minute songs. I just gave him the songs and said, do whatever you want. I'm not going to tell you a thing. No, you do whatever you want. And everything you hear on that record is a one shot. I'm not going to say it's a one take, but we never changed anything. Those were his ideas, straight up, out of the box. Brilliant. Just brilliant.
He sounds great. He really does. It fits the music. It's spot on.
Yeah.
Awesome.
You think he sounds different? You think he sounds different than he does with Fate's Warning?
I know what you're saying. You could tell it's him. It's unmistakably him, but he's singing. Yes, it's a different style. He's allowed to be a little bit more melodic with the lines, I think, with this material.
I think it's a combination of the melodicness as well as the looseness. There's a certain, and I always wondered why he wasn't a little bit more like this with Fate's Warning, especially during that Parallels time, because that's kind of in that ballpark where you can be a little bit looser and you get a little bit more one-on-one contact with whoever's listening to it. Not such of a standoffish vocal, but kind of that more in your face that you're talking to somebody. I mean, the king of that is David Coverdale. You know, when you listen to that, you feel like he's in your living room and he's like spitting on you. You know, he's like right there. And I think Ray, you know, really came out a little bit on this one and really nailed that. I mean, yes, it's Ray, but but the dude's always sang in the pocket. You know, I mean, when I played with him anyways, he always sang in the pocket, and he really took that one to another level on this.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, album sounds great. I think it sounds fresh, and he sounds young. Like his voice sounds awesome. So, you know, maybe there's some sort of sense of kind of renewed creativity that's present there. And thanks for sharing all that stuff about all the singers and everything. That's really, really interesting to me to think what might have been, you know. I guess I want to get into some of the details of the recording of the album. I don't know if some of this was like during the time of COVID, or like if you guys got together, or if this was at a home studio, but I'm always curious about, you wrote the songs of the drums first, it sounded like, collaborated on keys, but did you base all the tracks originally with like final drum tracks and send them out and piece it together that way, or did you get together? Like, how did that process work out?
Considering that 4 out of 5 live in different countries,
yeah,
you know, Philip and I are here, but he's actually in Arizona. I'm in California. Ray's in Spain, Viv's in France, and Jupe is in the Netherlands.
Wow.
And then put COVID on top of that. So I think
Right.
that's kind of obvious what happened there. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank God for the internet. Thank God that all of these guys are very adept at recording and sending files and all that kind of stuff. It was basically flawless. I would have to honestly say it was easier than getting together in a room, you know, because you get together in a room and this guy's playing and that guy's playing. And as much as getting together is cool, the only other problem that happens with getting together is like everybody gets fixed on like your first idea, which is necessarily not your best. Oh no, we really like that. Well, you know, usually I do like 15 different versions of that, but you guys are stuck now because you like this. We just moved it around, you know, and added things. Right out of the block, it was all demo. You know, it was just, you know, the drum sounds that I had that were just up. And we just, you know, we demoed the living daylights out of everything. And then when it came time to actually record, I brought the engineer into my place to really dial in the drums, and everybody cut, you know, in their own studios.
Cool.
You know, actually Philip came to LA and he recorded the bass with me, the whole album. And that's where you see some of those, like on Trial by Fire, the video of him sitting behind me and me at the console. That's when he was recording bass, and Alex Solka was there shooting video and pictures and stuff like that. So he recorded the bass there. Not that he couldn't have recorded at his place, but it was just a good excuse for us to get together and screw around, basically.
Yeah.
And it's great. You know, it's always great when you're working together like that, in the same room. No, that's the way we recorded. It was kind of piece by piece, and then, you know, I had the big job of taking everybody's files and getting it in one big session and getting it perfectly, because the last thing I wanted to do is send it to the engineer and it'd be like piecemeal and stuff all over the place. I wanted to take it, download the files, push everything hard left, and it should just play, you know. And that takes a lot of work, as you know, because just the computer can get funny, you know, things can happen, and you got to just make sure. So it's checking and double checking, and that's how the recording process worked.
Yeah, that's really cool. Thanks for sharing all the details. We were speaking with Gavin Harrison, I don't know, 3 weeks ago from Porcupine Tree, and he was able to record at his home. And I just, as a drummer, the reason I want to know is I hate setting up in a studio and the pressure of all that. I like being in a home, like, you know, it's basically like your home field advantage of sorts. So I think the drums sound great, and so I don't understand the idea of going to a big, expensive, you know, place you have to rent out for 2 weeks any longer, just about, but...
Well, here's the kicker. Couple things. I basically have all the gear that you're going to have in that, you know, $1,000 a day studio.
Yeah.
Not everybody can have that. I mean, I have an analog console that I've had for 25 years. I have everything that's Neve, you know, Neve, Summit Audio, Lexica. I mean, I have, just because, number one, I was in the studio business. Also, I've been doing it a long time. But more importantly, I didn't get married till I was 43. So I could spend all that money on gear. No problem. No problem at all. And the studio business was really good. So I had no problem spending money on gear. that has a lot to do with it, though. You got to have that setup, all the way down to the A to D converters. You lose a lot. You can't just stick a bunch of SM57s on the drums and think, oh yeah, I'm going to have the greatest drum sound in the world. And going beyond that, the engineer. I brought one of the guys in from DW and just dialed it in. I can't do that. I mean, I can wing it, but you want that next level. And again, kind of a philosophy behind this whole record was my philosophy of, you find the best people you can find and you just let them go. I'm not going to tell Hugh Syme what to do with an album cover. I'm not going to tell Ray what to sing. I'm not going to really tell Simone how to mix. I mean, obviously we went back and forth on things, but you just find the best people you can find and let them do their thing.
Yeah, right on. So this is a question you probably get and have gotten many, many times, and I don't want to pigeonhole you as a drummer, but as a metal or prog metal drummer, I think best known as such, you're one of the few that plays traditional grip. So again, I'm sure that question comes up quite often. But I think it does play into what makes you more of a unique drummer and a drummer that has your own sound, which is, I think, as a drummer, what you're hoping for. Do you feel like traditional grip has offered you advantages over the years? And if so, kind of talk a little bit about that as, again, one of the few prog metal drummers that plays that way.
That just goes back to like when I was taking my lessons, when I was age 7. Back then match grip was out, man. That wasn't it. Back then it was all about jazz, and traditional grip. And it was funny because I remember playing through, having my lessons as well as playing through all the bands and orchestras in schools. Traditional grip, you either get it or you don't. I don't think it can be taught, but I think it either works for you or it doesn't. I've seen a lot of guys. I mean, let's face it, God rest his soul, but Neil Peart had the worst left hand traditional grip I think we've all seen. Nothing personal. I'm just being true. Look at Vinnie Colaiuta. Look at Steve Smith. Now that's what you call a left hand. Picaro played match grip. Cool. I just did it my whole life, and I worked on it because I knew you're going to need power in it. I looked at guys like Steve Smith, and kind of saw. I didn't go overboard with Freddie Gruber and all of that kind of stuff. My thing was just hours a day, I do play matched at time because I have the left hand, the little snare drum over here that you really can't play that way. I think I did the whole Slave Your album match grip just because I was bored, maybe. I don't know if it helps or hurts me because there's plenty of guys match grip that just, tear it up. It's just easier for me to play like 16th notes and 32nd notes because I've been doing it for so much longer that way. And the real bottom line is I like it. I like the way it feels. I like the way it looks. I like when I play how I've developed my left hand to really stick it in the rim. I can do it. I can do that, match grip too, but I just like it. I just like it is what it really comes down to.
Well, I think fans of your music like it as well, and it's just an interesting thing. I feel like you're seeing less and less of it, but like Todd Sucherman has really gotten to this point of being considered, one of the greatest drummers, at least among drummers that I know, and he's playing with sticks, playing some really hard stuff. Dave Weckl plays, the mess out of his drums, and he's traditional grip. So yep. I think it's cool. It's just there aren't, you'd almost count on one hand the number of traditional grip drummers that play like metal, which we'll talk about in a little bit. But I just think it's great. So I had no idea that you'd played match on an album.
See, Mark, this is why I bring a drummer to ask drummer questions.
Sorry.
No, absolutely. I think a lot of that too is when you're talking about those guys that you're talking about. And again, what anybody does is hey, God bless. That's what makes it America. But you're talking about guys that are schooled. And usually whether you start really young or you're in the school orchestras or whatever, traditional grip is there, and some guys gravitate to it. As I remember, and I didn't go to Berklee by any means, but I thought in the early days when it was really heavily jazz based, it was all traditional grip.
I think that's right.
You see guys like Vinnie Colaiuta and stuff like that. Stuart Copeland, there's another one. Mm-hmm. I think it's just the way they learned when they were kids, and here's the other one that that kind of separates the men from the boys. As a drummer, you know, I mean, my dog could play match grip. Okay. It's natural. It's like grabbing chicken wings. You know what I mean? It's like, it's natural. To play traditional, you got to work on it. It's a whole different muscle group set. It's a whole different thing. It doesn't come natural. Kind of the King Kong drummer kind of thing comes natural, you know, match grip. So I think that's why a lot of people gravitate to that more,
Right.
Than spending the time and the energy and the effort playing traditional grip. But I think a lot of those guys are a little older and just been taught back in the day that way.
Right
Yeah.
on.
Well, you know, as someone who is not a drummer, though, what I find interesting in listening to this album, particularly from the beginning, from the first notes of the first song, I can tell it's you playing drums. You know, from having listened to you forever, and it's very unique to the music. You know, even with wanting to maybe make this music more accessible, like you were saying, no 12-minute songs, things like that, I still find you're doing interesting drumming and not just, you haven't simplified there, which I think makes the music, you know, stand out is what I'm trying to say.
I learned an interesting lesson. And first of all, thank you. And truthfully, that's what I've strived for my whole life. I don't have all the rock books that all, like a lot of guys learned all the basic rock fills. I don't have Carmen Appice's book on rock drum filling. I was always I was that guy who kind of threw the manual away. As much as I had my lessons and I was taught and I can read and all that, when it came to working out of books, I kind of went left field on the whole thing and kind of just did my own thing and stole things and came up with my own style. But I was always striving that, you know, that the prime example is Eddie Van Halen. One note. You don't even need two notes, just one note. And you go, oh, that's Eddie.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what I was striving for. Now, here's the kicker, though. Is that good or bad? I mean, does it pigeonhole me? When I played with Graham Bonnet, the big thought and theory behind my head was, okay, this is like straight up kind of commercial hard rock. You can go do your Cozy Powell imitation. You can play straight up, you know, maybe truthfully, the whole idea was to go play there and, you know, the Scorpions would be at a gig and go, oh, wow, look at that guy. You know, we're looking for a drummer. That was my whole thought. I like you said, I have a certain sound and I'm in a certain realm. I was trying to get out of that. And it didn't work, number one. And number two, it was kind of unsatisfying. I mean, I played the songs for what they were. I approach music the same regardless. But I definitely, you know, the point of this record was to put my stamp on it, number one. But number two, whether you're a musician, a listener, or a drummer, it's all about the groove. If you can't tap your toe and if you can't get it after the first chorus, then we did something wrong.
Yeah.
Because I wasn't into the whole odd time thing. I wasn't into really weird stuff. Someone has to anchor it, and that's usually the drums. So if you look at songs like Trial by Fire, the opening number, and even the ending number, The Silence is Broken, you hear these drum riffs, and you hear electronics flying around, you hear cowbells, you hear toms, you hear all kinds of stuff. I'm basically hitting everything with my right hand, but the kick and snare are 1, 2, 3, and 4. Right. You can't miss it. You know, it's just, it's there. It's the groove. Does it make me unique? Well, I like to hope to think so, but can I make everybody move is the more important question.
I want to ask you about some of the songs on the record, a couple, the singles mainly. So Trial by Fire, if you could talk a little bit about how that one came together.
That was one where that was one of the first 3 songs. So what we had right off the bat was Rise Again, Runaway, and Trial by Fire. And where that came from, that was a riff that Jupe had, the basic riff, the guitar riff. But I had that drum pattern that's throughout the verse. And when we put the song together, it's interesting because I didn't want your traditional big chorus and then the really light verse, the big chorus, the light verse. I wanted that kind of hard, heavy rock song where it just goes from the beginning and it grabs you right off the front and it just holds on to you. And then the chorus releases. The chorus is the big release. You know, it's the groove. It's the, you know, the feel good hit of the summer that has that, you know, the groove that everybody can catch. So that was the first one that we put together. That was definitely put together in a very pop format. Um, verses and choruses. I love the halftime bridges that we have that kind of break it down. I thought it was important to get away from just this driving thing. To me, it's all about the dynamics of, if I'm giving you, let's say I'm giving you water all the time and I take the water away, when I come back with the water, it's really going to mean something as compared to if the hose was just on the whole time. So it's that kind of just the dynamics. And I love the ending. I love the Earth, Wind, and Fire ending.
Yeah.
I don't know anybody really doing that too much anymore. I don't know. That song has the big background vocals. I brought in my friend Robbie Wyckoff to do that. I don't know if you're familiar with Robbie or not.
No.
Okay, well here's one. His last gig was with Roger Waters doing The Wall. So he's a very, very accomplished studio session guy. Sung with Diana Ross, Celine Dion, Steely Dan, done all the Phineas and Ferb stuff, does a million commercials. You know what I mean? He's just that guy with the voice. And I wanted to go for that very big plush 70s and 80s background sound. And it's nothing against Ray, but you don't want the same guy singing all the parts because he has a similar texture to his voice. You start bringing in other people is where you get that big thing. So gave Robbie the song, said, hey man, do your thing. And he did. He came up with that echo line of Chains That Bind You. And there's a lot of the stuff that you might not jump out with you, but if I took it away, you would notice it. It just adds the thickness and the texture to the vocals.
Yeah, no, that song's killer. And you released the first single a few weeks ago, Machine Gunner. Tell us how that one came about.
Well, believe it or not, we're a band that like plans everything. So I'm sitting here looking at this strictly as a business going, okay, nobody has a clue of what this band sounds like. I mean, it could be four dudes playing cellos. No one knows, it could be overly proggy and just nauseating, and it could make, Dream Theater look like, Katy Perry. No one knows what the band is. So to set everybody kind of in the right direction, I didn't want to throw the ballad at them. I didn't want to throw, any kind of a proggier tune. Trial by Fire or the Machine Gunner was, 3 minutes and 33 seconds of Van Halen meets Iron Maiden. Big chorus, good playing, great lead playing, just kick you in the face. Kind of set the tone for everything.
Yeah.
So that one kind of just played itself out. That was one that Jupe came in and he had the riff. That's all he had was that riff. And basically, if you really listen to the song is basically just that riff dressed up a million different ways, kind of like in a pop song. Okay, we're going to break it down here. Mark's going to play this. We're going to break it down here. Philip's going to play here. It's a very, very catchy riff with a big hook that just keeps, coming back and coming back and coming back. But also I thought it was very important for the first song out of the block to be super energy,
Right on, yeah.
Same reason there's no title of the album. I didn't want to give anybody a preconception of like what it was because, people all they have to do is hear the name of the album and they'll dismiss it before even listening to it. So everything is kind of built that way. And then the third song that'll come out on August 12th is Stranded, which is, one of the quote power ballads or however you want to call it. That's Ray's favorite song. So I had to kind of give it up. I would have went with Rise Again, but either way, I think we're
you're covered.
Really,
yeah.
I think we're good. They're different, but they're similar. It's if you go back to that 80s thinking, remember how like when bands came out, you knew at a certain point the ballad was coming. The power ballad was coming. The thing I really like about that song though is the ending kind of kicks into that heavy thing, and I can see that in a live situation where that'll go on for a minute or two, and it's not going to be your traditional power ballad per se. I think Ray did an amazing job. He sounds like Sade a little bit on that one. He's got that whole sexy thing going. So if we can cross over, God bless. And just a really strong chorus. Really, all 11 songs to me can stand on their own with strong choruses. Some might be 5 minutes long, but the choruses are great. I mean, Far Side of the Horizon, to me, that has an amazing chorus. He just did an amazing job with the choruses. And one of the things that really is magical about this record is when we were putting the music together, me and Viv were like, okay, here's the verse, here's the chorus, here's the verse. And I said it before, I come from kind of a school where, the chorus is the heavy part and the big driving, bring it home, and the verses are kind of mellow and, you're getting to the chorus. A lot of times Ray flip-flopped it. And
Right.
he took the heavy part and made it a verse and used the release and the slow, not slower, more melodic part and put the chorus there. You know, when you listen to At the Water's Edge, it's exactly what he did. He did it on a few songs. And it's just so magical when you have people, you know, you find the best people you can, just let them do their thing. And then there's magic or there's not. But I'm not going to tell him what to do. And him bringing that in was magical. There's no question. It was absolutely magical.
Agreed. Absolutely.
So, Mark, if I could, I want to ask you, kind of going way back, the first band that I was aware of with you, and I was born in 1984, so it wasn't like I was aware of it at the time, but the band Warlord. Heavy metal band from the mid 80s, and that was a band that you were in before Fate's Warning. I'm curious, just from a historical perspective, like what sort of drumming, what sort of drummers were you into in the early 80s? Like what was influencing you?
My biggest influence in that period was Ensley Dunbar. And if you listen, I don't know if you've ever heard the first 3 Journey albums.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Not way before Steve Perry. See, I grew
Right.
up in the Bay Area in San Jose. They were a San Francisco band and they used to play. And I would go see with my brothers, you know, in a club that held 300 people. You know, Neil Sean had the big afro and the whole bit and the Fu Manchu. And here's Ensley Dunbar. And this will tie it all together. But here's Ensley Dunbar. First guy that I ever saw inverted China. First guy that I ever saw had a drum set that had moons and stars painted on it. First guy I ever saw tore it up playing traditional grip. So when I saw him, I went, oh, you can do this. You can play heavy and do this. I stole so much off his record. You know, as a drummer, you would know I stole so much of the importance of a left foot keeping time with the hi-hat, you know, whether it's on the on beat, whether it's on the off beat. You know, I've played around with taking it to the clave and all kinds of stupid, goofy way. It doesn't work for me. It's either on the beat or off the beat. And you use that in conjunction with what you're doing with your right hand a lot of times. There's so much motion, so much groove. In these clinics I used to do, I used to play, you know, Judas Priest Living After Midnight drum beat, where the ride cymbal was playing quarter notes, but the foot was keeping the quarter note. Okay, this is cool. This sounds like the record. But the minute I took that foot and put it on the offbeat, all of a sudden you're kind of like in a salsa club. You know, there's a total different dynamic. And that's kind of basically the genesis or the bottom line of everything that I do. I'm just looking for something more creative that I can do with my body. You know, I can have my right hand and left hand playing all over the place as long as the groove is tight and it's consistent and memorable. It has to be repetitive. I'm good, but that early influence stuff, Ensley Dunbar and the hi-hat stuff, oh, absolutely. You know, and that kind of just set it in stone right there.
Yeah, that's
he's
awesome.
great. Absolutely.
So kind of in keeping with the history, I love that story about early Journey. That's great. Was there a kind of a marked change in your mind when you switched from Warlord into Fate's Warning? Like, did you start to approach the drums differently with it being, you know, more of prog metal, or was it pretty much the same thing? And then how did your influences change during the kind of late 80s, early 90s?
It didn't really, you know, I'll never forget. I went to, when I first got to LA in the early 80s, very early 80s, I went to a guy for drum lessons and kind of said, hey, you know, I want to play like Tommy Aldridge, this guy, and this guy. And this guy, and he goes, oh yeah, I can have you do that in 2 weeks. I'm thinking, yeah, right. That didn't happen. A lot of it was just practice, experimentation. I sat in a storage bin in Van Nuys, California, where it was 104 degrees and all metal with 2 bass drums just going for hours.
Right.
I mean, if nothing else, I put in the hours. Am I Dave Weckl putting in the hours? No, but I put in the hours. It's just when I play, it's just the experimentation factor. Getting into Fate's Warning was a whole different ballgame because Warlord, I'm not going to say that it was a pop band, but, you know, there was no odd time and it was all very song oriented. Especially, you know, whatchamacallit, Perfect Symmetry. Oh my God, you know, I mean, I can count, so I can figure out odd time. It wasn't my favorite thing to do, but it was a real big challenge making different time signatures feel good, you know, and different things like that. That's probably the only Fate's Warning record that wasn't technically recorded to a click, because just some of those parts, like in Part of the Machine, they weren't in tempo, they weren't in time. They was kind of a free form jam per se. I didn't really approach it any differently, you know, whether it was that or when someone hires me for a song, I just kind of go into this I mean, I don't turn the black lights on and smoke a bunch of weed and get into a zone. I don't do that. But I just listen, and I listen, and I go, okay, what are you hearing? What sounds good? And then I start to try to push the envelope. You go, well, what would happen if you kind of turn that around, or, take the left hand instead of every other hit on the snare, put it on the rack tom, or put it on the open hi-hat, or a lot of experimentation. I am not that guy that pulls out the final version right off the bat. It is trial and error, and there's more error than trial. There's it just you have to do that, I think, if you want to expand, because, and I think everybody that can really play will tell you that, unless some people, God bless them, are that out of the womb amazing, but I don't think so. I think it's practice. It's
Yeah.
teaching your body, and then if you're, you have the God-given thing in your head of how to go, okay, my body, I got it all going. Like, how far can I stretch this? It's the simplest thing, but a lot of people don't do it. But like just playing over the bar line. No one says you have to stop on 4 and hit the kick on 1. It's how creative do you want to be, but still make it feel good, obviously. And there's a million of those that go out the window. I'll never forget. There's a drummer, you'll appreciate this. I sat there in that shed for hours playing double stroke rolls with my feet and paradiddles. After getting done, losing 6 pounds in sweat over that time period, I went to record it. I couldn't tell any difference. Again, you have to experiment. You have to try different things. Some fail. Some sound great in your head and sound horrible when you play them back.
I want to just close with one last question here for you. Just going again back to that era, but recently was the 25th anniversary, I believe, of Pleasant Shade of Grey, and an album that for Kyle, I'm sure also, and myself and everybody that I was friends with at the time. I mean, it messed with our heads so bad. It was the most amazing record at the time, and still is something that's so influential. What can you tell us about working on that record and recording that one?
Oh boy, do I got stories. I think personally, it is probably the most underrated record in the Fates Warning catalog. I think it took a really bad rap, and I don't know why. I don't know.
Oh, not with us. We all loved it.
Yeah.
but I've heard a lot of people talk. I mean, I hear and read, and I even read some article this morning about some guy saying how on the list of all the Fates Warning records, that one's at the bottom. And
That's impossible.
and I think yeah, okay, not exactly.
For what it's worth,
I
I always assume that people think that's the best one. So
Yeah.
that was my conception growing up, into prog music around that time. But go ahead, sorry.
I thought it was brilliant. I don't know if either of you guys ever saw that thing live, but it was something to see live.
No.
We pulled it off. I had a rack as big as a refrigerator with all the electronic sequencers and blah. We played it note for note for the record. It was amazing. The one funny story that came up, Jim had the idea of part 1, part 2, part 3, part 4. When we were working on it, though, we had other titles like the Kansas part, or
Right.
we had like our own little names for it. I thought it was brilliant. I think that record is so deep that people haven't even gotten to the point of how deep it really, really is. I put something on the other day by accident, or it popped up on a YouTube, and I forget. I couldn't tell you the parts. I could tell you what eye to eye sounds like, but when you say part 6, I don't know what part 6
Sure.
is. I don't know. But the very last part of that record, it's kind of the slow grinder, and it just starts building and building. I thought to myself, this is deep. This is really deep. Loved doing it. I thought it was a major step. I thought it was the step that kind of said, hey, look, yeah, Parallels was cute. We missed the boat. Warner Brothers didn't pick it up, whatever. Nirvana came in. Yeah, it was all over, but check this out. This
Right.
was like real. This was like thick. I'll never forget. I go to New Hampshire because that's where Jim was living at the time. We had to program everything up. Now you got to remember, this is way before computers. Okay, no always have computers. I'm talking about my little Roland 505, my little Yamaha sequencer, and we're programming up the different sound effects and all that kind of stuff to get everything just right. And I'll never forget, we worked the whole day, and we go to walk out to go to dinner in the dining room, and I actually knocked the plug out of the wall. and nothing was saved.
Ugh.
Nothing was saved. Zero. We got it all back because we remembered it, but
Right.
it took time,
Mm.
and it was an interesting story as far as that goes. I mean, no one knows that because it was just me and Jim, but that I don't know. I thought that record was so well versed. I thought it flowed so well, and live we played it from beginning to end, just like it. None of this stopping and being cute or anything. It went just like the record. And because once you started, you couldn't stop. So, yeah, I thought it was great. I thought Ray sounded good. That the old Murder Munich and all that, and it had some, to me, some crazy ass wild fast runs and playing and stuff, and it was just I watched those videos back because Takumi, our road tech at the time, we were filming for the Pleasant and Shaded Gray video, and the original guy who filmed it like either screwed it up or never even got drum tracks or whatever. So the last part of the tour, Takumi just put a camera right there. That's why on my YouTube channel, you can basically see the whole thing. There's all the different parts. And I go back and I look at that and I go, man, that's intense. I thought that was intense. I don't think a lot of people got it. I think the music industry was really changing at that time. It's kind of like what happened after Parallels. It's like, okay, we sell like 150,000 units. Warner Brothers is supposed to come in and pick it up, and run with it. They do. I don't know if you guys have ever heard the remix with We Only Say Goodbye. Jimbo Barton, who just got done with all the Queensryche stuff, they put him in a room with 6 tambourines, 4 pounds of weed. James LaBrie's in there singing background vocals. He basically made We Only Say Goodbye sound like a Def Leppard song, okay? Which at the time was great because it was following up Eye to Eye. You got to remember, that's like when REM had that big song going on, and there was a certain kind of feel to it. This was right there. If someone would have picked this up and ran with it, we probably wouldn't be having this conversation right now. It was brilliant. It was Def Leppard-y, it was so commercial. It was great. That song by itself is kind of a, We Only Say Goodbye kind of commercial, but he really pimped it out. Right. And I think he locked himself in the room for 3 days, and it was brilliant. And then all of a sudden, I'm not sure if you guys remember, the industry changed with the Nirvana record coming out.
Sure.
And all of a sudden, Here's Fate's Warning, selling 150,000 units. We're on the radio with no promotion. The gigs are selling out. We're playing better places. And all of a sudden, we can't even get a meeting with a crappy label after that. It was rough.
It was a tough time for a lot of bands, yeah.
It was rough, and but I always kind of crack up and think to myself, it's like, okay, you see Journey, Styx, Kansas, Foreigner, they're still selling out big places, and they're playing all their hits. I haven't really seen a Counting Crows Matchbox 20 reunion coming down the pike anytime soon. I don't, God bless those bands. And I always said, and Motley Crue is my example, I go, hey, I might not be into the band, but if you're making money in this business, I have to take my hat off to you, because I ain't and you are. So God bless you. But that whole era that came in that kind of killed everything, it didn't have staying power. It didn't have 20-year reunions, 30-year reunions. Those bands aren't out touring and tearing it up. The music industry radically changed, right? And it was rough.
But look, you're still here. You're still making killer music. I think that's a good point for us to let you go here. But again, I just want to make sure everybody's aware of the A to Z record. A couple of songs are out now. We got Machine Gunner and Trial by Fire, both killer. Album comes out on August 12th. We got the Mark Zonder, Ray Alder reunion on this thing. What more do you want? And it's killer. Everybody go check it out. Mark, real pleasure to speak to you, man. Really, we're big fans, and we love hearing you play anytime you keep doing it, and good luck with the record.
Absolutely. I really, really appreciate your guys' time and all the support, because without it, I would just be driving kids around, and that would be it.
For sure.
Cool.
All right, man. Hey, pleasure. Enjoy the rest of your day. We'll talk to you later.
Thanks,
I really
Mark.
appreciate all the help, man. You guys,
Yeah, man.
Take care, you guys.
You got it. Bye.
Bye-bye.